In fact, there are many rich people that are known to have this offer that if you honor them with that, they want that omen, they know what it is to make the money, they want to make more money, that they'll cover the cost of the whole party and they'll even give a gift to the family, you know what I mean? And these people sometimes do that. And, once you've exhausted this grandfather, that grandfather, there's certain customs, like the same person shouldn't do more than one child in the same family, okay? Not even a typical religious family, you can have 5, 6 boys, you know what I'm saying? So, this grandfather, then you run out of people, okay, what now? So you honor an uncle, you honor the rabbi in the community, but the father will take it. But at a certain point, hey, we can not sell it, but we can lease it out, cover the cost a little bit if they need it, okay? That's as far as that's concerned. There's another beautiful tradition associated with this. It's called the kvater. Kvater is that the couple that brings the child into the room where the ceremony will be taking place. And that typically happens is the mother gives over the child to a woman, and she, typically it's a couple, typically. Could be, I've seen it be not a brother and sister, but typically it'll be a husband and wife, and she will bring it to the men's section and hand it over to her husband, who will now bring it to the place where bring the baby to the place where the Brit Milah will be taking place, to the actual spot. And it's considered to be, again, an omen for having children. And that's why typically people who are sensitive will give it to young couples or older couples who have not yet married to have their own children and give them the honor in doing it. Okay? What the word kvater means, it's an old Ashkenazic term for this, kvater. Perhaps the Rebbe actually suggests that it comes from the word, from the more German/Yiddish, Gottvater, which in English would be godfather. Okay? So this is like the godparents of the child. They become now the surrogates, if I may, to bring him in for the parents to the thing. And typically there are several other honors. There's an honor of actually making the blessings and giving the name. That's usually, you honor somebody for doing it. Some people fit in a few more honors of, hey, holding the baby before, holding the baby after, and so on. In fact, the blessing that's made is made over a cup of wine, like we do the kiddush, we do every major ritual. Where else do we do the cup of wine? Under the chuppah, when a couple gets married. But every important ceremony in our life cycle, except for, God forbid, for passing, it involves a cup of wine. This is a very special thing, a very, very special thing. I'm just thinking, is there anything that I didn't cover? Oh, also, there's a su'udah, a feast that's made afterwards, a meal. Almost just like you have to eat a meal on Shabbat, there has to be a meal. People you have to sit down and watch, and it's also considered to be, again, a su'udah, an omen, to eat from this meal. Some people, that's why you even have this thing where they bring home some food, and it's not because they're, they like freebies, but they'll bring home like a piece of cake or some cookies, and I typically will do it. And sometimes you get looks like, some help, let's get them shopping. No, it's just about eating food. It becomes like holy food, like Shabbat food, and bring it and share it with your family. Say, hey, I brought some cookies or some cake or something from a Brit Milah. Okay, I'm not making egg salad, but or something like that. Some people even go as far as making sure that it's a meat meal, just like you would do on Shabbat and that. But typically, because the Brit will be in the morning, it's very hard to have a meat meal, you know what I mean? So you do, like fish and, things like that, bagels, maybe that's where the bagels, lox and creatures came in, you know what I mean? Things like that. I'm not suggesting that that's necessarily a Jewish staple, but I'm just saying, that's what you'll typically see by a Brit Milah. So Brit Milah overall is a very, very special occasion, and like I said, here you see it. Now I just want to share quickly the power of 8, okay, and why it's specifically on the 8th day. Now you'll hear all kinds of things, and most probably there's a lot of merit to them. In truth, for example, I've heard that naturally, in the baby that's born, the vitamin K, which is very good for health when blood congeal and something, doesn't kick in until the 8th day. Interesting, huh? So Hashem's saying, if I'm going to I'm telling you to cut the child, it has to be realistic potential of him being able to, not God forbid, bleed to death. You know what I mean? Bleed out. Hey, now they inject the children right when they're born with it. Okay, literally almost within hours of the birth, right? kind of overriding God's plan, I guess, but that's not my place to go into. I don't know, the merits of it, but in any case, that could be true, but that's not the main reason. I truly believe that many things you can always find the fringe benefits of. For example, last week we had kosher laws. We keep kosher because we keep kosher. There may be fringe benefits and may be healthier in certain ways and maybe better. That could be, but that's not the reason we do it. Okay, we're not serving God to maintain our health. We maintain our health to serve God. Mm-hmm. You understand? So in this case too, there's something very, very important about the 8th day. So one of the primary reasons that I've given is that no matter what happens, if a child gets his Brit Milah on the 8th day, that means he survived through one Shabbat. So before he can get his Brit Milah, he has to have absorbed fully the Kedusha, the holiness, the aura of Shabbat, at least one Shabbat, in order that if a child's born on Shabbat, then they have that Shabbat, and the Brit Milah will be on Shabbat. Which incidentally, I forgot to mention, on Shabbat, you're not allowed to cut flesh, unless, God forbid, it's life-saving surgery. But you cannot do any elective surgery whatsoever, with one exception. The Brit Milah, if it's being done on the 8th day. Now what I mean to say if it's being done on the 8th day is if for some reason the Brit Milah was delayed, then you cannot override Shabbat. But if it's being done on the proper 8th day, then this is a positive commandment which says on the 8th day you must do the Brit Milah. A positive commandment overrides the negative commandment of thou shalt not do any tasks, thou shalt not do any work in Shabbat, which surgery is one of them, cutting skin. You get it? So getting back to it, you see the power of 8, so you have to pass at least one Shabbat, and I guess that's where I got to it. If he was born on Shabbat, then the 8th day will be on Shabbat. Yeah, what's your question?
The 8th day will be ideally if the child was born, let's say, like you say, on a Shabbos. Then you go directly to the 8th day, which will be Shabbos.
Yeah, but I explained, and that once I explained how you could do the Brit Milah on Shabbat. Not only how you could, but how you must do it on Shabbat. Even though on Shabbat, typically you cannot do elective surgery. Because the Torah here commands it directly, you must do it, and that's a positive command.
But my question is, what about the kid is born, I don't know, on a Wednesday?
Then the Brit Milah is on Wednesday.
Okay.
After, so that's the point I'm saying. It's always on the 8th day, unless, like I said, the child's not healthy or there's a reason for concern, then you postpone it. Once you postpone it, then it doesn't override Shabbat or doesn't override the festivals. Because now you no longer have that active positive commandment on the 8th day. It's no longer the 8th day. But going forward, just to finish with this, the power of 8. In plain, simple English, 7 represents the cycle, the godly cycle of nature. I say the godly cycle of nature because the truth is that even nature is not separate from God. Right? But God chose to create the world in 7 days and create this full cycle. And everything really ultimately runs in cycles of 7. That's why it starts with Sunday, with the first day of the week, as it's called in Hebrew, Yom Rishon, Yom Sheni, Yom Shlishi, and it culminates with Shabbat Kodesh. That's the pinnacle, the height of that cycle. And then it starts a new cycle. The number 8 represents a step higher, aka supernatural. So this is the power of the supernatural. And this explains why the baby that's now going to be bound with Hashem directly, physically, that you can see it, you can never get rid of that connection, not only in the spirit, but also in the matter. It has to be done on the 8th day. Because the 8 represents the supernatural. The bond between a Jew and Hashem is supernatural. It's not limited to nature. Not only is it not governed by nature, it cannot be changed by any whatsoever natural or worldly occurrence. Even the worst of anything in this world, in this universe, think of the Holocaust, cannot undo that connection between a Jew and God. Even the Jew that was so hurt, and you can't blame them for the way they felt and the things that the horrors they've seen, and that they've witnessed, and the family they've lost. and they said they're walking away from it all, they still feel Jewish. They still have a connection to Hashem. They still, they'll be angry at it, but they're still a Jew. You know what I mean? A Jew cannot stop being a Jew. Why not? Supernatural. It's a supernatural connection. In fact, if we go back all the way to the beginning, this was a debate between Yitzchak, Isaac, and Ishmael. Ishmael, to his credit, when Avrohom, our father Abraham, was told to circumcise himself and all his household, Ishmael was 13 years old. He consented, like a man. This is what God wants, this is what we do. Later, Yitzchak was born, miraculously. His birth was also supernatural. Avrohom was already 100, Sarah was 90, which, by the way, reminds us of this, reminding you and me that our existence is a supernatural one, from the very first moment. And then he has his Brit at his 8th day. Later, Ishmael is arguing and says to him, I'm better than you. Because I could have refused. You had no say in the matter. It was done to you. Right? You were a little baby. You didn't know what hit you. It will hurt. Right? You didn't know what happened. So you had no control, no say in the matter. You never did this voluntarily. So I am better than you. And there's a lot of merit to his argument. But still, who prevailed? Who's the real Jew? The real servant of God? Yitzchak. Why is that? Logically, Ishmael is right, correct? The answer is, what Ishmael did was fantastic. Nothing short of wow. Really, he heard that this is God's desire and he did it. But because he was the one to make the choice, means that his connection to God ultimately is limited to his understanding, to his logic, to his rationale, to his decision making. That's fantastic, but up to a fault. Because at the moment that, for whatever reason there may be, whatever circumstances may bring, that may make him change his view, and any one of us there or listening certainly has things in their life that, 10 years ago they thought one way and today they see the world differently. As you get older, as you have more experience in life, good, whether good or bad, your perspective on things change. Either because you become more knowledgeable, either because you become more mature, or more cynical, I don't know. But the fact is, we don't think the same way when we're 30, 40, like when we're teenagers. So what happens when the way you see the world changes? What happens when circumstances change? There's a very big threat, or a big enough threat, that your connection to God can also change. Why? Because it came because of your decision, and therefore it is somewhat limited to the extent of your decision. If your decision making changes, that changes too. But what happens when your bond is beyond any whatsoever rationale? It was never conditioned on your understanding, you're not understanding, you consent, you're not consenting. It's there, it's done. And that is why the Torah says on the 8th day. Power of the supernatural, and while the baby's still young. And that connection will never go away. Shalom.